start? Club, hey club, folks. Oh gosh. All right. Leo is missing tonight. Is that correct?
He's missing.
He's missing.
He's not here this evening.
Miss Langworthy, I know. I heard from earlier. Okay, let's begin the meeting.
Yeah, she said.
Yeah, Miss Langworthy. Right. Let's begin the meeting with public comment on agenda items. This is the way we begin our study session.
Madam Mayor, could you please say the date for the tape?
Today is Monday, November 3rd, 2014. This is our study session for tonight. And let's open the meeting with any public comment on items that are on the agenda. Do I have anybody here for that? That's rare. Okay, then we can go right into the agenda. Do you want to go right with the Solar Garden discussion?
Yeah, let's go ahead and jump right into that. We have representatives here from CEC and SunShare. Mayor and Council, as you all know, the city's received two proposals from SunShare, and one from SunShare and one from CEC, the Clean Energy Collective, to participate in Xcel Energy Solar Rewards Community Program. We had a presentation back on September 8th. The city hired Emily Artel with Lotus to do an analysis of the two proposals. It was a lot of information that was provided, and I think we had a long meeting that evening, so the direction from council was to bring back a second round of discussions on this and to see if we can come to some conclusions this evening on which direction council would like to go. So we did invite representatives from both SunShare and CEC back this evening, and also Emily to give a presentation. I've allowing each company to give a brief 10-minute presentation to talk about their business model, and then Emily will provide a wrap-up of her summary and kind of a shorter analysis to try to really nail down what the differences are between these two proposals. So with that, we will got SunShare's presentation up and ready to go. So if SunShare would like to come to the podium and okay.
You're like a little kid here playing.
Well, thank you, Patrick, for all your hard work on this, and Emily as well. I know you put a lot of time and effort into this, so we really appreciate all your hard work, and the council, thank you for hearing us out here. You having a hard time hearing me? Yeah. Okay. I'll lean forward a little bit. Make sure I could find the buttons here. Okay. You can hear me? Just get closer? Okay. So my name is Mark Bensaveni. I'm Senior Vice President of SunShare, and I work with a lot of clients like yourself, cities, school districts, municipalities, to subscribe folks to our community solar gardens. I'm also head of operations for SunShare. So SunShare, I'm going to go through our proposal very quickly and then address some of the questions that were followed up in the second round of questions from the city. But SunShare is one of the first community solar companies in the country, along with CEC. We develop, own, and operate solar gardens. That's our primary business model, and this is the niche of solar that we're in. We don't do anything rooftop or residential. We have 12 megawatts of awards that are either in development or operating, 7.5 megawatts of which are in the Denver metro area, including the garden that we're hoping to subscribe you to here in Jefferson County. And we won 100% of Xcel's 2013 RFP, especially with regards to Jefferson County. I probably should have gave you a little bit of a heads up there, but There's the first slide. Second slide. So some of the customers that have signed up with SunShare, I think one of the things we want to talk about here is risk and a proven model. So as you can see from our customers that have signed up already, City of Westminster, City of Arvada, Highland Hills Recreation District, Manitou Springs, Adams 14, Adams County, University of Colorado, Colorado Springs, Green Mountain Water District, Kent Denver, a few others that are not on here. Oh, Kent Denver is on there. And East Cherry Creek Valley Water District. So we've done a few of these proposals and talked with a lot of folks, and I think this is a program itself that is a great program that folks are interested in, and SunShare is a company that folks are going with. So we're happy about that. The SunShare project team, so one of the questions that Emily and Patrick came back with us about was a little bit about our team. So SunShare is partnering with NRG to create a world-class team here. We're going to leverage each other's expertise to make sure this project gets done on time, on budget, and at the schedule that we say we're going to complete it. NRG, a little bit about NRG, they're going to provide complete project finance for this project, so construction financing and long-term financing. They're also going to provide the final design and engineering. They have in-house teams that provide that for us. Construction and project management. So once our project breaks ground here in about a month or two, they are going to provide all the construction management for the project. And then ongoing operations for the 20 years of the agreement. NRG is going to be fully responsible for making sure the system is up and running, it's insured, and it's always operational. SunShare, as the developer of the project, has done all the project development and land entitlement up till this point to get it ready for construction. We also lead the team in subscription sales and SSA contracting. Obviously, that's why we're here today, to talk with the city about subscribing. We also head up community outreach and marketing. So part of what makes this a community solar project is we have commercial clients in cities and school districts, but we also have residential component and a low-income component. And SunShare leads those efforts to do the marketing and outreach to those clients. And then long-term customer management. So SunShare is going to be in this project and involved with it for the 20 years. So if City Council or Patrick or anyone has a question about your bills, how Excel's managing the program, how the system's operating, you call SunShare, and we're your first point of contact. A little bit about NRG, in case you haven't heard of them. NRG is a Fortune 250 company. They're traded on the S&P 500. They're one of the largest, if not the largest, independent power producer in the country with 10,000 plus employees. So with respect to size and reliability, NRG is a great partner. Their financing capabilities, they have $2.3 billion credit line with global banks, $10.6 billion market cap, and $3 billion invested in renewable energy projects and environmental improvements. So this is a company that's specifically dedicated to solar, wind, and renewable energy. Their solar expertise is unparalleled. They have world-class panels, inverters, and other equipment that they source from respectable and high-quality manufacturers. They have in-house engineering and construction and asset management, so they are responsible for making sure the system is designed right and operating right for 20 years. 24/7 system monitoring and warranty and insurance. So they fully warrant and insure the project to make sure if there's any issues, they're taking care of it. Going into the proposal a little bit, I'm sure you've all taken a look at this at length, so I won't spend too much time on it, but SunShare has two proposals, two ways to participate in our garden. One is a upfront prepay option. That's the first option here that we're talking about. This is a 208 kW option. That's the capacity that we had left in our garden. $553,000 upfront payment, which amounts to roughly $2.67 per watt. Solar gardens are typically, or solar arrays are typically measured on a per watt basis. The savings we anticipate or estimate from the garden for the city would be about $1.6 million over 20 years, and the ROI on that investment is about 296%. So that's our first option. Our second option is a zero down, pay-as-you-go option. And this is something that's a lot more typical with cities and school districts around the country. The SSA or PPA model is very popular in both residential and commercial. And it's something that is predominant in the industry. So with this option, same system size, 208 kW, zero upfront payment, so the city is out of pocket for $0. You simply pay us as the system produces, and you pay us on a per kilowatt basis. So as our 208 kW produces kilowatt hours, the city will be paying us 12 cents per kilowatt hour. If the system doesn't produce, the city doesn't pay us. If the system overproduces, the city pays us 12 cents per kilowatt hour times whatever that production is. And we lay that out in the contract. So one thing you get here is certainty. When you are going and making your appropriations for any future year, we'll have a table in our contract that basically says, here's the kilowatt hours we predict, here's the rate that you're going to pay, and here's the total amount that you need to budget for any given year. The 20-year savings we estimate are about $1 million, a little bit over $1 million, and the return on investment, obviously you haven't put any money down, so it's sort of infinite. Before we move on, and in summary, I just want to touch on a couple of the questions that were asked of SunShare in response to our proposal. So we've done a lot of work, as you can see from our clients. We've gone through this process several times with some folks. And one thing that I know that you all are interested in is how do we mitigate risk and how do we do the right thing by our constituents? Obviously, it's election day. We want to make sure our constituents are happy. So I just wanted to address some of the points that Emily brought up in her proposal regarding risk and sort of a path forward for the city. So one of the first bullets that Emily talked about are potential risks in participation. So what if scenarios? What if SunShare doesn't build our array? SunShare is willing to commit in our contract that if we don't build our solar array, we'll let the city out of the contract. So we will mitigate that risk of our array not being up and running by putting a sort of drop dead date on our development and saying if we don't hit this by this time frame, the city can get out of the contract. With respect to once our system's operating, risk to you all in payments, if our system is not up and running, you do not pay us. So if there's a mechanical failure and our system's down for 3 weeks and you're not receiving credits from Xcel, you're also not paying SunShare for those credits or paying back a loan or any sort of financing structure. So this is truly risk-free in terms of operational risk. So I think that's important to note. Additionally, after the contract starts, it's a 20-year agreement. If at any time you all are not comfortable with this program or decide you want to get out of the program, SunShare will work with you to take someone from our wait list and transfer your capacity to that person. So again, it's a 20-year commitment, but it's risk-free in that we can transfer your capacity to someone else. Finally, our partnership with NRG, a $10 billion company, they're going to be operating and maintaining this thing as well as financing it. So nobody is more incentivized than NRG to keep it up and running and to be there if anything goes wrong with the system, because their returns are predicated off getting that revenue from the city for kilowatt hours. One of the second areas that Emily asked us to look at was how do the solar gardens support the city's goals to serve the public? I think that's pretty simple. I think with both companies here, we're saving the city money. I think that's important for your constituents to know that you're doing whatever you can to save them, to save their tax dollars and assign those to areas where they may need them. I think two, the city gets to go green. That's always a good thing. And then the third point is that by going green with SunShare, the city is not taking on or supporting, SunShare's project is not receiving local or utility incentives for this Jefferson County project. So we are not receiving REC payments from Xcel. Well, that's not exactly true. Our REC payments from Xcel are 0.001 cent per kilowatt hour. So when your constituents come to you and say, is this project adding to my rates with Xcel? The answer is no, which I think is a great thing. A couple other points here real quickly. General industry and market trends Emily brought up. Third party, zero down, PPA option or SSA option that we're offering is pretty standard in the industry and pretty prevalent. So by going with that sort of structure, you're going with industry trends and with other folks around the country. And then I think other areas for consideration, Emily, you had brought up, this is a 20-year agreement and a 20-year contract for the city. And like I said, you have options to exit that agreement if at any time you're not happy. But I think when you're making your decisions, one thing to consider is that it is a 20-year agreement. SunShare's contracts with Xcel are 20 years. Our interconnection agreement with Xcel for operations are 20 years. So any estimates of savings that you all are looking at and considering should be based on a 20-year time frame. So I think that's all from me, and I appreciate you all giving me the time here to come and speak on SunShare's behalf, and I'm available to answer any questions once we get through the process.
Great.
Thank you.
Thanks, Mark.
Do we have questions of Mark right now? Mr. Fitzgerald? Mark?
This one? Okay, sure.
It's in your packet too, these slides.
Yes, sir.
Mark, your $1,062,000 return over 20 years is based on a best case scenario. Is that right?
No, I wouldn't say best case scenario. I'd say our best estimates of what utility rates are going to do in the future. So when we're analyzing savings, nobody has a crystal ball for what Xcel's rates are going to do. And in fact, that's one of the reasons why you sign up for a PPA, is so that you have certainty of what your payments are for that amount of electricity that you're buying from us. If you asked Xcel what their rates are going to be next year, they wouldn't tell you because they don't know yet. So what we have to do is extrapolate over time, over 20 years, what we think Xcel's rates are going to do. And based on our analysis, we believe Xcel's rates are going to go up at 5%, approximately 5%. So our savings are based on that assumption.
Well, on page 2, these pages aren't numbered, but the $1,063,000 is actually the best case scenario, and you have a middle scenario which shows about $700,000.
Oh, yeah, okay, I'm sorry, I forgot about that part of our original proposals. Yeah, so what we try to do is show you a little toggle. So Xcel's 5% increase, correct, is in that scenario our best case assumption. We also like to show you an Xcel rate going up at 3%, so that we can show you that even if Xcel's rates only go up at 3%, which is, I believe, Emily's assumption, or the historical rate of inflation in the US, you're still saving money. So we're trying to show you, yeah, a conservative option and a little bit more.
What would happen if, let's say, a horrendous hailstorm came and destroyed the field?
Great question. If a horrendous hailstorm came and destroyed the field, which we all know in Colorado is possible, our insurance kicks in. Our operations and maintenance team from NRG gets out there. They assess the damage. They assess what work needs to be done to replace the panels or replace an inverter. They deal with the insurance company, and they get it fixed as quickly as possible. Like I said, you will not be paying SunShare for those kilowatt hours if we're not producing, so they're incentivized to get it up and running.
Okay, and NRG is going to do the financing, right?
Correct.
And do we know a rate?
It's a very good question, and a little bit more complicated than a rate. So the way solar project finance works is it's not really a loan. So NRG is coming in and partnering with SunShare as an equity partner in our solar arrays. So they will be providing the construction finance, they will be providing long-term finance, and in return for that, they're building the project, and they're also receiving a return on their investment.
So, but the figure, the $694,000 figure assumes some cost for them, right?
Trying to find, where is the 694?
It's on what for me is the third page, I think. It's the,
Oh, is that the assuming a 3% escalation rate from Xcel?
yes.
Okay. That 694 is your estimated savings over 20 years. So yes, the rate that we're offering you per kilowatt hour generates a total amount of revenue over time that NRG needs to make the project work. The simplest way to think about it is real estate. If you were developing a commercial real estate project, in order to get project finance, you would need to show that you have a certain amount of leases for the building to show that it's cash flowing at a certain rate. So SunShare's SSA rate is the total revenue that we need for the project to generate NRG's return. So the 694 is your savings, but their return is,
But in essence, we're paying them for the money that's borrowed, isn't that right?
if you were to become a subscriber, Wheatrich's SSA payments combined with all the other subscribers would generate a total amount of income per year that NRG needs, correct, to generate a return.
So
But you are not,
use some way to figure out if you're figuring our net as 694 out of over 20 years, you use some figure for that loan, didn't you?
there's no loan, and there's no loan to the city. The city does not have any loans with this project. You simply sign up to buy energy. So think about it as if you were moving from one house to another in Excel territory. Your mortgage is just for your home. And then when you tap into the meter that's at your house, you just pay Excel for coal or natural gas energy. This is the same structure. The city is just deciding to buy solar power from SunShare versus natural gas or coal. So there's no loans on behalf of the city. There's no obligation financially, other than as we produce kilowatt hours, you pay us for those kilowatt hours.
Thank you.
Mr. Starkman.
Thank you, and thank you for your presentation. Then if I look at this, you're charging, you would propose to charge the city 12 cents per kilowatt hour,
Yes.
and that's a constant rate over the 20 years?
That increases at 2.9% every year.
Oh, it does? Okay.
Correct.
So,
But that will be spelled out in the contract. So the annual increases will be spelled out in the contract.
okay, so that's not a constant, that goes up at just under 3% a year,
Correct.
okay? Does it always go up, or does it sometimes go down, or does it fluctuate on the cost of production?
It always goes up.
It always goes up, okay?
The rate per kilowatt hour goes up.
Gotcha.
The total production, we can't predict sunlight, right? So as production, if it's a cloudy day, there's less production. If it's a sunny day, there's more.
And if you were not able to fulfill your end of the contract with respect to providing energy that the city used, would you then, and then the city was forced to go to another provider, would you pay the difference in cost at the current time for the time that the city had to go and acquire energy from another source?
I think that's a good question. The way we look at it is, if SunShare does not produce the electrons that we say we're going to produce and provide you with those electrons, you simply go back to your current electricity rates with Excel, and you're out of our contract risk-free. There's no termination clause. There's no penalty of getting out of the contract. So you go back to status quo. And at that point, if you'd like to go with another provider, you can.
Did that answer that for you?
Well, I was wondering, I mean, can I think of a scenario where the price of energy at you're fixed at 2.9% increase a year, and for some reason we had a greater increase there, would there be a scenario where it would not be profitable for you to continue to sell energy to the city at whatever the predetermined rate is, because we're sort of predetermining the rate now, and decide it would be in your interest sort of to default on the contract or to cease production, I guess, would be another way to
No,
look at it.
there's no situation where we would do that. So in order for NRG to make a return and for SunShare to realize the benefits of working with cities and school districts, we're incentivized to keep that system running, and it has to run for 20 years. Absolutely has to run.
Thank you so much.
Welcome.
Are there other questions?
Okay, thanks, Mark. We'll move on to CEC, and I believe Amy is going to present.
Hi, my name is Amy Thompson. I'm the Director of Commercial Sales for Clean Energy Collective. Ms. Mayor and council members, thank you so much for the opportunity to present tonight. CEC is offering a purchase of community-owned solar for the city of Wheat Ridge in one of our interconnected Jefferson County arrays. I wanted to go over a couple of points that we think makes our program unique. And we are talking about risk. Mark is exactly right. And this is a new type of product for you guys, and to get educated, it takes a little bit of time to understand how this works. But risk is the main topic of tonight's work session, and the financial payback of our competitor is at face value an option to consider. However, there are several major differences between CEC and our competitor that make the choice to choose a CEC purchase the best option. With a CEC purchase, the city of Wheat Ridge can begin saving money immediately. You're going to keep the most money in your pocket and have flexibility at the same time. And you're going to be choosing a proven, experienced leader in community-owned solar over possible speculation of an array. The city of Wheat Ridge can begin saving money immediately with a CEC purchase in our array, as our Jefferson County array is built and it's up and running since this summer. Our competitor to date has no arrays operational or built in the XL territory. Their experience is limited to the Colorado Springs territory only. With the slated delivery of the Jefferson County array for May of 2015, our competitor is projected to begin saving the city of Wheat Ridge money in the middle of 2015, not immediately. With this delay in completion, a certain amount of risk begins to play into the option of our competitor. CEC, with a purchase with CEC, it means savings and power now. This is our Jefferson County array. It is located right off of 93 and 56th in Golden, and it's optimally situated to gain the maximum production. By owning your panels and the electrons produced, rather than just participating in a power purchase agreement, the city can maximize potential gains well over the first 20 years. With this agreement, Xcel Energy is obligated to renew an agreement after the 20-year marker. This is accomplished with CEC in renegotiating both the land lease and the Xcel agreement. And we build our arrays, much like our competitors, to last well past 20 years. Just look at the savings that a purchase from CEC represents. You should be allowed to keep most of the money in your pocket, and this can only be attained with a purchase model. Where we shine in this situation is in a purchase model. As if we're compared to the actual SSA or the PPA that our competitor is talking about, we well outweigh the 20-year financial gain. Our competitor cannot offer any financial benefit over 20 years with this PPA program. But when you own your system with CEC, you're allowed to continue to reap the benefits for well past 20 years. So what does a 50-year estimate of economic benefits look like? We can see what the environmental effects are, and we can also see that a 50-year total savings could be well over $12.3 million before the purchase of the system is realized. The savings versus the purchase price shows $11.5 million. Now this is taken on a 50-year spread. You've paid your system off in 8.5 years. You own it, it's yours. You can sell it. You can transfer it anywhere you want within the Xcel territory that you have in Jefferson County. The first year payback is a 10.5% return, and the 20-year payback is a 200% return. Both of those are outstanding for a city to be able to gain on an investment. This slide shows you the on-bill credit and rec payments, and rec payments give you about a 10% improvement in savings alone. Our rec payments are far greater at 4 cents gross per kilowatt hour than our competitors. One thing to remember too, when you own the system and you're not participating in a power purchase agreement, is that your on-bill credits rise and fall in lockstep with Xcel's tariff rates. There's no 2.9% escalator. There's no given that you will suffer at all from an escalation rate. So what we provide through Alpine Bank, which is also a customer of ours, is a Tabor-compliant lease to own. The city comes to us with zero down. They purchase the system over 15 years. The interest rate is at 5.25%. We've already provided the term sheets for Patrick, and you've already been pre-approved for this program. I think it stands to show that we are the proven leader in community-owned solar, and one of the things I wanted to show you is our track record, which I think is important for you as far as risk mitigation. We started in 2009. We have 12 Xcel Energy gardens that have been awarded. Out of those 12, 9 are operational. The other 3 are either under construction or in development. We have 40 producing solar systems online with over 26 megawatts of power across the United States. We have more community solar than any other developer in the United States. We're currently serving customers of 18 utilities in those 9 states. And here are our government customers that are actually receiving on-bill credits and rec payments through our program with Xcel Energy. The town of Telluride being exempt from that. Everyone else is an Xcel customer. And you can see this is an impressive list. We have recommendations from these folks. We have stories that can be told with case studies that are in your packet. People genuinely like owning their system and reaping the benefits to their maximum capacity. Here are some examples of the arrays that we've built. These are all through the Xcel program. Here are some of the utilities we do business with across the United States. And we were just named 194th in Inc. 500's fastest growing companies. We're doing something right in community solar by being recognized in the clean energy sector. We have a proprietary software that goes with your purchase. It can be linked to your website. It can be on a handheld device. It can be a teachable moment for your constituents and your school children within Jefferson County. This will tell you the actual production of the array. It also manages and monitors your accounts, your credits, and your rec payments. So in conclusion, I'd like to say that the city of Wheat Ridge can begin saving money immediately. You don't have to wait until next year. The risk can be mitigated by going with a true, proven, community-owned solar expert. And by choosing to participate with a purchase model, we put the money back in your pocket. And as you can see from our resume, we are a proven solid leader in community-owned solar. There's an interesting fact with this, that only CEC and Bella Solar have Xcel arrays built and producing. It's one thing to win an award, it's another to execute it. And while this is a very difficult thing to win an award, execution is 3 times tougher. So the next steps for you, if you're interested in a CEC purchase, would be to lock in the reservation with a 10% reservation deposit while you fully explore whether this is the way you want to go. It's a fully refundable deposit. It holds your reservation, and then after financing is completed, the balance is due, and you start saving money immediately. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Amy. Do we have some questions? They're mulling. I am curious about the same question regarding the hail, since we would own the panels if there was a hail problem.
Correct. So with the CEC purchase, we have a separate, what's called a bankruptcy remote trust account, that all of the rec payments, we take a portion of your rec payment and seed that account. And then at the beginning, when you pay your $3.40 per watt, we also take a portion of that and seed the account. And that goes for 20 years. So operations and maintenance, if we cease to exist, continues, and the array is treated as a separate LLC, so it continues to function. And what happens is, under that operations and maintenance account, it will cover all of the insurance. We have $100 or $1,000 deductible through Chubb Insurance. So it'll cover all of those catastrophic events as well as vandalism, et cetera. Along with that is the lease. The land lease is paid through that. Property taxes are paid through that. Any kind of maintenance and upkeep.
So the savings has that figured in? In other words,
does.
that's completely clear of
It
the
does.
other charges?
It does. And when we show a $1.5 million return on investment after 20 years, that's after the purchase price has been deducted.
Got it. Okay, thank you.
Yes, sir.
How do you deal with panel improvements?
Well,
If the technology improves, does Wheat Ridge own 900 obsolete panels? Or do they trade those in? What happens if the technology changes itself?
and it will. I mean, we all know that. You buy a car this year and it's different next year. So we know that it's going to change. So what we've done is we treat this like a coal-fired plant. We actually run this at its peak efficiency, manufacturer's warranted suggestion efficiency, for as long as we can get that production. The panels are warranted for 25 years. And when they start to degrade, which of course they will, and we show that in our spreadsheet, as they start to degrade, if we need to augment the system to bring that production level back up, that's what we will do. Now, at that time, we'll use the newest technology because we know we can't get an old panel. So that's what, so very similar to if it ain't broke, don't fix it, as long as it's making money. We want this to make as much money as possible for the customer. Yes, sir.
Mr. Fitzgerald?
We have this chart in our thing here. What am I supposed to see in this chart?
With a 2.75 reader. Yeah, I apologize. You guys have a lot of meters, so it's tough to get it all on one sheet. What we did was an analysis of the highest on-bill credit meters for you and showed you which ones would be addressed with this program. It benefits the city to actually go after the highest on-bill credits to pay that system off as quickly as possible.
And
Showing me,
This is showing you each of the meters, their location, and the on-bill credit currently that would be generated.
a lot of these meters service irrigation pumps, ball field lights, those types that will have the highest credit.
Do we want to hear Mr. Fitzgerald, another question?
well, ball field lights might be on at night when there's no solar production. So how does that work?
So regardless of when you use a particular location or meter or electricity at that location, the fact that your panels are generating energy during the day is what we're paying you back for, not for the ball field lights at night. We're paying you with the generation, the power generation that your solar panels are creating during the day. Did that answer that? You look like that might not.
Like storage?
No, that answers that. Okay.
Yeah, and you know that's a credit right on your bill. So the ball field lights would receive a credit, on-bill credit, to reduce the expense of the ball field lights.
If one meter has an excess, it's transferred, the credit is transferred to another meter?
No, that's not correct with Excel. So what we need to do, and that's why you have that list, is we carefully select the meters and we size the system according to the usage that that meter has or that premise number has. And we want to make sure we don't go over that estimation because we don't want you to have a credit that you can't use. So for instance, ball field lights, that's a great example. High demand, low use, right? We're not going to run them in the winter. So you will probably have some credit in the winter that's burned off in the summer with those ball field lights going nonstop every summer night. So you will have some excess credit in that respect, but we don't want you to carry a credit over year after year. That doesn't make any sense and it doesn't pay for itself. So what we're trying to do is give a very fiscally responsible way for you to have solar. And this is one of the few renewable systems that pays for itself quickly.
Would it be helpful at this time to hear Emily's presentation, which is sort of a,
I believe it would, Mayor. We'll have Emily come up and she'll give a shorter version of her presentation she gave back in September that compares the two different proposals.
Okay. Hi, everyone. Can everyone hear me okay? Okay. Well, it's nice to see you all again. Thanks a lot for inviting me back. So if you remember, I was here in September talking about Solar Gardens and the model and Excel's program and the differences and similarities between the models proposed by Clean Energy Collective and SunShare. So I'm here tonight to, with a refined presentation, to just talk about the differences and the similarities between these two models. And I want to warn you, I have a little bit of a cough, so I may have to take a break now and then, but I'll try to make it short. So as you know, Solar Garden program is administered through Excel's program. And there's only two solar garden developers that the city can work with. That's Clean Energy Collective, and we also refer to them as CEC and SunShare. So I've made a series of slides to demonstrate the differences between these models so you can see them side by side. So on the left-hand side is Clean Energy Collective. So as you heard Amy talk about, under this model, the city would own the panels, so you would own the physical asset. And CEC has proposed two payment options. One is a one-time purchase where you would hand over a lump sum of money to CEC for these panels. The second is a zero-down financing where you would work with your lending agency to acquire that money to pass over to CEC for these panels. And to make this model economically attractive, CEC proposes that the city will receive both a savings stream and an income stream. So the savings come from those bill credits, and those are administered directly by Xcel Energy. And then the income comes through REC payments, which would be administered directly from CEC. So SunShare offers a slightly different model. And as they explained very well, the city would not actually own the physical asset. You would not own the panels. The city would own the electrons or the electricity generated by those panels. And SunShare has also proposed two payment options. One is the one-time prepay, so very similar. The city would hand over a lump sum of money for the electrons projected to be generated over that 20-year time period. Or the city can enter into agreement through a zero-down solar services agreement. So this is the SSA, or it's referred to as the pay-as-you-go model or the PPA. So this is when the city would just pay SunShare for the electricity generated on a monthly basis. And this still requires a 20-year agreement, although Mark mentioned different ways that they would work with you on that contract. And then the prepay, even though a term sheet wasn't provided, it's assumed that option could also be financed. And under SunShare's model, they propose that the city would receive a savings stream. So this would be in the form of bill credits. So both CEC and SunShare submitted 2 proposals. So they submitted an original proposal back in spring-ish, and then a revised proposal this past September. I took these numbers directly from the proposal, so I didn't manipulate these. There's no data analysis. This is from their proposal. So you'll see Clean Energy Collective is in the green box, and SunShare is in the yellow box. So under Clean Energy's model, they're projecting their panels would produce about 7 million kWh over that 20-year time period. Under the one-time purchase model, it would cost about $776,000. CEC projects this would save the city about $1.6 million over 20 years, and this would result in an estimated payback of between 8 to 9 years. So this is how long it would take the city to accumulate those savings and REC payments to pay back that initial investment, and then the city would offset electricity cost. So they also provided a term sheet, and Amy mentioned it's a 15-year term at 5.25%. So this would result in payments about $75,000 a year. When you put that all together, it's about $1.1 million. Because financing incurs some costs, this reduces the savings a little bit to about $1.2 million. So switching over to SunShare's model. So SunShare projects that their panels will produce about 7.1 million kWh over 20 years. Under their one-time prepay option, it's about $553,000. And they project this will save the city about 1.6 with a payback of 6 to 7 years. Now under their SSA model, if you would remember, Mark said it cost about 12 cents per kWh. So this is about $45,000 a year. This will escalate 2.9% each year. So over 20 years, when you put all that together, the city would have paid SunShare about $1.1 million. And then SunShare projects that this would save the city about $1 million. So it's my thought that these models have a lot in common. They're similar size, they have similar bill credit rates, they both offer outstanding environmental benefits. They'll showcase the city as a leader among their peers, among your taxpayers, demonstrate your commitment to sustainability and renewable energy, reduce greenhouse gas emissions. They're just, environmentally, they're a really great way to go. And they will also produce significant financial benefits. So both models will save the city money. Unless something really strange and substantial happens with Xcel's program, they will save the city money. And both models also have established O&M procedures. So unlike other ways that the city could acquire solar energy, you don't have to worry about O&M. Now they have their different ways of doing it, but they have it taken care of. So under CEC, they have a separate O&M trust. So that LLC will do the O&M for you. With SunShare, they have a separate company, NRG, who will do the O&M, so you don't have to worry about it. Also, you don't have to worry about land management issues because CEC's array is located on Jefferson County land. SunShare's will be located on Jefferson County land. And then both projects, as I mentioned before, will result in savings compared to the status quo, which is paying Xcel Energy for electricity. So additionally, each model brings unique benefits to the city. And I put these up here for your consideration. This isn't meant to be inclusive. These are the only unique benefits. These are just the most obvious. These are the high-level benefits. So under CEC's model, as you know by now, the city would own the panels. And the warranties for the equipment part of this system, they range from 20 to 25 years. NREL average predicts that solar systems will last on average about 30 years. Some would say they could last 40 to 50 years. So it's a good chance that if you own these panels, they will last longer than 20 years. Now, if Xcel continues their incentive program past 20 years, well, there's the potential to receive additional savings. Like Amy mentions, CEC's garden is commercially operational, so it went live this summer. City of Lakewood's a participant, so you would be joining that array. And in addition to receiving savings from bill credit, the city would receive income from the rec payments. And this is important to point out because recs are guaranteed and they're fixed. So we know what they will be over 20 years. Now, they're only 10% of the total savings and income stream, so they're not a majority, but they do provide a little bit of insulation from the varying bill credits. Now, switching over to SunShare. So SunShare has the pay-as-you-go model, which is really attractive to some of our municipalities. They see it as less burdensome. You know, I don't maybe see there's as much risk with the performance, but maybe others do, and that can provide a higher level of comfort. However, as you know, the pay-as-you-go is a 20-year contract, so it's not designed that you sign up now and you change your mind next year, although I realize there's that condition in the contract that could happen. It's still with the intent of a 20-year contract. So unless you're participating in energy performance contracting, I don't know how many of you know what that is, no performance is going to be 100% guaranteed of any program, and solar gardens are not different. We know we'll see performance variability year to year, and we know that some of the key factors are not guaranteed and they will vary. This includes the bill credit rates, electricity consumption at the sites, electricity generation, and electricity rates. And we can try our best to control electricity consumption, but we cannot control these other factors. And I think it's this degree of not being able to control that brings risk to the city. But it's my proposal that if we can identify this risk, set reasonable expectations, we can manage this risk and at least be prepared if something were to happen. So over the last year, I've talked to dozens of people about solar gardens, from various people at Xcel Energy, the PUC, municipalities that have gone forward with solar gardens, municipalities that have not, various energy industry professionals. And my conclusion that one of the major financial risks to the city are these bill credit rates. And the reason is they are administered by Xcel Energy. You will not have a contract with Xcel Energy for these rates. Now, this program is part of the tariff. Xcel Energy is regulated by PUC, but Xcel will not write a contract to say we will give you these. And we know they will vary. And bill credit rates are what are used to determine your savings stream. So as those vary, it will impact your ability to accumulate savings and your payback period. And then I prepared a report to the city back in September. And in that report, I made the proposal that we can define boundaries of risk. So what the bill credits could look like. A best case scenario, bill credits are just going to be great. They're going to be really high for 20 years, best case scenario. And we can define a worst case scenario. So Xcel Energy throws their hands up, they don't want to do this anymore, worst case scenario. And then we can figure that probably what's going to happen is in between these boundaries of risk. That's going to be maybe a more realistic scenario, and if it is better than that, well, that's just great. I mean, it's always great to save more money when you aren't expecting it. So if you want more information on these scenarios and how they were calculated and the assumptions that I used, then I recommend you take a look at the report. It's all documented there, and I don't want to bog this down going through those assumptions, even though I'd like to. I don't want to right now. And if you have any questions, you can talk to me. So I ran just a couple of scenarios, and these tables show the numbers from that result. So with Clean Energy Collective, they have the one-time purchase option. So under their moderate scenario, I'm saying the city could save, estimated $1 million. The payback period would still be about 8 to 9 years. With the zero down financing, again, it drops a little bit because of those financing costs. So the city could save between $600,000 and $700,000. Again, this is over 20 years. Under SunShare's option, the one-time prepay payment option with the moderate scenario, I'm saying the city could again save about $1 million with a payback period between 7 and 8 years. And then with the zero down model, the city could save about $500,000. Now, considering the order of magnitude of these numbers, the assumptions applied, I think it's fair to say, at least in my mind, that looking at the moderate savings scenario for CEC's one-time purchase, the moderate savings scenario for SunShare's one-time prepay, they're pretty close. I'm saying you're probably going to save about $1 million over 20 years. Now, comparing the zero down financing, you might save a little bit more than comparing it to the SSA model, but those numbers could still come out in a wash. So the numbers that I calculated demonstrate that if you were to deliver an upfront payment, you would have a higher potential for cumulative savings. And the zero down models increase cost and reduce the potential for cumulative savings. However, all of the models result in savings compared to the status quo. And again, just unless something really significant happens, I mean, we don't know what it will look like 20 years down the road. So that I'm talking about if Excel were to really substantially change the program. I mean, there's a lot of mechanisms in place that seems like it would prevent that. But this is all based on the assumption that will not happen, and I think that's a pretty likely scenario. So there's lots of different ways to show savings. The last slide showed it. I'm just going to quickly show it in a different way. This is an example. So CEC and SunShare both chose certain sites that the city owns to participate in the solar garden. CEC chose 13 sites, and if you were to average the current electricity rate, the city's paying about 26 cents per kWh. That's a really high rate. That's really high, which is probably why these sites make good candidates for solar. So I did a little math, a little analysis, and if you were to participate in a solar garden with CEC, then your estimated net cost to CEC and any remaining cost to Xcel Energy would result in about 15 cents per kWh for the one option, 20 cents in the other option. And if you could take a step back and have less emphasis on the actual absolute values themselves, but see that the amount that you would be paying is less than what you would be paying Xcel. And the same thing happens with SunShare. SunShare also chose 13 sites. Now, they are different sites than what CEC chose. So their rates are a little different, but you can see you're spending 28 cents per kWh for the sites SunShare chose. Again, that's a really high rate. So the estimated net energy cost by going with SunShare would be somewhere 17 cents with the one-time prepay or 21 cents with the SSA. Again, just trying to demonstrate that these rates are lower than what you would be paying Xcel Energy. So in closing, I think solar gardens are a really great option for the city. It's pretty hard to find a solar project with these kinds of paybacks. I'm used to seeing paybacks 20, 30, 40 years. So getting a solar project where you can get a payback of less than 10 years is really phenomenal. It's just great. There's a lot of benefits. Obviously, the environmental ones are pretty strong and significant. And there's a large financial benefit to the city as well. And then it's my position that the city can prepare for any risks, any financial risks that might happen by looking at realistic and conservative assumptions and using those to set reasonable expectations. And then if those assumptions are too conservative and we exceed the expectations, I mean, that's just a great thing. And then it's my opinion that there's really no wrong choice in this. Both companies are great. They have outstanding reputations. They're getting a lot of municipalities on board with their programs. And really, it just comes down to whichever business model works best for the city and whichever one resonates with you. So that's all that I have. Thank you so much for your time tonight.
Thank you, Emily.
You're welcome.
Do we have questions of Emily? It sounds like Zach, yes.
On the 13 sites that both companies chose, is there a reason why there's a limit of 13 or?
Oh, no. I think it's kind of what Amy was talking about. So they have to find the sites that will yield the highest on-bill credit and then match the size with their availability. So it's kind of this big mix and match game. They want to make it very economically attractive to you by choosing those sites, and then they have to match it with their availability. Does that sound right for both of you guys? Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah, and so that's why I think these paybacks look so good because they were each able to find the sites that yield the highest bill credit rates that they could.
Okay.
Any other questions? Mr. Starker.
in looking at your, sort of, I guess, the slide, and it's got the green box around the CEC tabulation and the yellow box around the other one. I don't have a page number on here. But it looks like that in the CEC is generating 228 kW, and Sunshade is delivering 208 kW at the panel size. But then when you get to the actual generation, the Sunshare seems to have a larger generation.
Yeah, that's an excellent question. So the way that they convert from the kW to kWh is based on an estimate of efficiency for the panels. So if Sunshare has a smaller kW but a larger kWh, they are estimating that their panels will be more efficient.
Okay, thank you.
Go ahead. Isn't it also, though, I thought it was 1900? Yeah, so there's two components, right? Okay, great. Okay, thank you for that. Sure.
Okay, thank you. And then both of these proposals are sort of based, I mean, at the end of the day, in a rebate type program that Xcel Energy is providing to the public.
Right.
And this is driven by their tariffs with the PUC.
Yeah, it's driven by the Renewable Energy Standard, and then this program is written into the tariff.
Okay, and what is the relationship between the PUC's take on the regulation of Xcel Energy and what happens down at the State House in terms of is there a relationship there in the mandating of the development of renewable energy?
I don't quite understand. Do you mean how does the PUC see this program play out over 20 years, or their support of the program?
I guess I'm thinking more about the legislature sort of mandating solar and alternative energy generation as a public policy, and does that affect significantly the way that Xcel Energy structures their tariffs and the way that the PUC would regulate those? I mean, is there a chance that we go into 5 years from now, hypothetically the price of oil is low and generating energy on an alternative means is not particularly attractive in the public arena. So will this credit program that Xcel Energy has now, will that fall off the bandwagon, or is that sort of part of the risk calculation that we're looking at?
It's my understanding that if the program were to change, that would have to come from Xcel Energy. And the way the program is designed right now, the incentives are based on the cost of Xcel doing business. So if something were to dramatically change in the way that they do business, then they could petition the PUC and say, this is no longer fair to our ratepayers. And then the PUC would have to answer that, and then there would be a lengthy petition process with input from stakeholders. And I spoke with the PUC a few times about this topic and with a couple of individuals. And you may be aware that Xcel Energy is requiring that they have to transition their coal-fired power plants to natural gas power plants. And what that is going to do is it's going to cause an increase in our electricity rates in the short term because it's a costly transition. So knowing that our electricity rates are going to go up in the short term, and knowing that our bill credit rates are tied to those, there's a high level of confidence that our bill credit rates will continue to increase in the short term. Now, what short term? 5, 7 years, 10 years? What happens after that? We just don't know. I've asked Xcel several people point blank what's going to happen, and they have to say the company has no statement or something like that. I mean, it's just very neutral. They can't say anything. And the PUC, I mean, their response is we have to protect our ratepayers. So we don't really know. But knowing how many municipalities are involved in this, it seems like it would be really difficult for Xcel Energy to just change it and make it not an attractive program anymore. Did that answer your question?
Yes.
Okay, great.
Let me ask the council, we have two questions before us. One is, are we interested in a solar garden participation? And the second question is which one of these business models works the best for us? So I would like to ask the council, are they interested in the solar garden at all? Is there an interest there? And I'm seeing some nodding heads.
Yes.
I'm seeing that, so there's a somewhat of a desire to participate. Okay.
We have a solar array on our roof now, don't we?
We don't currently. The building was back in the 70s.
Did at one time.
When it was built, city received a federal grant to build this building with solar, and it didn't work. Is my understanding. Was it? Yeah, it was a 1970s system, so much different.
I might just say I had a solar panel on my previous house and it didn't work either.
Okay.
I think we need to make. Yeah, I mean, the technology today, it's a lot different, and
Right.
that's the whole benefit of a program like this. It's we don't have to own we don't have to have solar arrays on our buildings. It's a credit system through solar gardens that are managed and operated by other firms.
Okay, so what I get a general consensus that most of us are interested in participating in this program. Christy, do you have a question?
Oh, I don't really have a question. I was just going to say that I'm interested in participating in the program, but with our budget restraints, I'm also interested in as little upfront costs and monthly costs or annual costs as possible, just due to our budget constraints.
So a zero down, whichever way is the most interest to you.
Is there any way to partner with other political entities or municipalities in going forward with this, or why is it exclusive to each city rather than?
Well, I think you each purchase a certain amount, isn't that?
It's what's available on each array, and I don't think we have a mechanism in place or either company has a mechanism in place where they can do a multi-jurisdictional contract, because they all have to be approved, I guess, by separate boards and bodies. I don't know if anybody has a comment on that, but as you can see from both presentations, there is a long list of entities that have joined on already individually with their own contracts. And just, Mr. Dahl's not here this evening, but Mr. Dahl he has some experience with the contract and negotiations with CEC, because I think SunShare maybe wasn't in existence or not in the game in this area when Silverthorne brought on this program. Mr. Dahl represents Silverthorne also, so he does, if you decide to move forward, has some experience with the contract negotiation.
Ms. Davis?
So, looking at the summary that Emily had pulled together, and they were talking about the boundaries of financial risk, and then underneath it, it has the worst case scenario, and the worst case scenario on each side has a negative amount. Is that a cost to the city?
Yeah, that would be, but that's a really low risk. I mean, that wouldn't have to say the bill credits would go, it would start to decrease. So that was just showing that
Okay. But you're kind of, when you were talking, you were talking more, you know what, look at the moderate scenario, that's the more realistic.
Yeah, I think so.
Okay.
So, yeah, Mayor, if I may, as I summarized in the count or the staff memo, and as was summarized this evening by all three speakers, I think, both options are fairly similar in a lot of ways, and they both get the city in the in the solar game, if that's what you want to do. How we go about that, there's some different options for that, and I agree with Ms. Davis. My recommendation is too that we don't choose, if you want to move forward, we don't choose a one-time purchase options from either program. Our reserves aren't liquid right now to make those types of payments, so I would not recommend going with that. I think both options have fairly low risk. As was mentioned in the presentation, CEC, I believe, does have a longer track record with current solar arrays operational. SunShare is working on that, and I'm confident that they will have their solar arrays up at next year, as they have mentioned, or starting at the end of this year, I believe, even. So, I mean, that's something to consider. I suppose there's a little bit of risk in that, too. So it's, if you want to get in the game, there's options here. If you want to potentially see potentially larger savings over a long period of time, the CEC model may be that model. If you want to just get in the game and pay as you go, obviously SunShare's that model. Maybe that's a little less riskier. So it's really a policy decision at this point on which direction you'd like to go.
Mr. Mr. Fitzgerald. My new name for it, Fitzgerald.
Once you say it wrong, you say it wrong always.
Yeah.
I have to say that I think there are too many intangibles here, and I'm not really wildly enthusiastic about this. If you look at the CEC model and you save, using the moderate numbers, $657,000 over 20 years, I think that amounts to $32,000 a year, something like that. And I think we could accomplish that through other means. So I know that the city already is trying to switch to lower cost light bulbs, but and I presume doing heat things, but this, to me, this doesn't feel right to me. There are too many intangibles.
Okay. So you feel there's too many intangibles. I'm also wondering, since some of the cities that we know have made this decision, maybe it'd be worth it to get some opinions from them, how they made it. I see the city of Lakewood has gone with one of the businesses.
Staff has talked to most of the cities in the area. Lakewood used Emily also to do their analysis. We've talked to Arvada and Westminster, who went with SunShare. Lakewood went with CEC. I believe Aurora is currently going through an analysis, or I'm not sure if they are or not. But yeah, we've done that research with other cities, and it's, as you can see, different entities are choosing different companies. So every city has or entity has a different reason.
Does it fit one city's size versus another, or anything like that?
No, I think it's just comfort level on the models proposed, and honestly, a lot of cities didn't take it this far to city council. It was a staff decision on which company to go with, and they didn't actually bring it to council to ask for policy direction.
Okay, do I have anyone on council that would like to share their feelings as to which company is they're feeling more comfortable with?
I had a question. Do we sort of lock down then on the meters that we're going to go choose which of our facilities that we're going to buy solar power for?
And that can change. I believe, as they mentioned, that if the usages of those meters change over time, we always want to have the highest bill credit. So we'll analyze that on an annual basis or more to make sure that we're using the correct meters.
And I assume that the numbers that we're looking at are sort of optimized so that we're not wasting any energy, or not wasting energy, but not wasting the credits that we would be getting from the utility company.
Correct.
And I assume that in these, when you actually put them into the field, there is some loss of optimization in in the way that we get these credits.
not sure if I understand that question, sorry.
Okay, I mean, does the crediting, we're producing electrons and solar energy, or energy from solar,
Yeah.
and we're using it on our meters. Is there 100% usage of the power that we generate, or because we're going to 13 or 18 or whatever the number of meters are is there some diminution of value for the credits that we get, or is it 100% efficient on the credit side?
Yeah, I don't think it's 100% efficient, but I believe they choose, and maybe I'll let the companies speak to this, but they choose the meters to make sure that we're not building up excessive credits, so that we are optimizing the credits to close to 100% as possible. Is that
I think
correct?
optimizing location, usage, kind of what best fit, wasn't that what I understood about it?
Right.
You'll get all that you should be expecting to get. There's no losses. And with, you'll get all that you're expected to get.
That's good. That's fine.
I'm going to say that I do like the strength of CEC. I like their past, the history, the amount of contracts they have going, and they're ready to go immediately. However, I also like from the other company the fact that we are not financially invested, but it seems to me in both cases we're financially invested because we've made agreement. So, if that helps at all. Do we want to make this decision?
I think that looking at just some of the refined numbers that have come out with respect to the cost per kilowatt hour and the with respect to both the best, moderate, and worst case scenario within CEC, that makes it a more palatable choice to me when we're looking at the two options, just based on the actual numbers.
So you're comfortable with CEC?
Yes.
I would say I'm more interested in CEC based on the fact that you would start a savings, and I know it's not substantial as you express, but it is a savings over what we're paying right now. I really like the idea that this, it's an environmental issue, and that we would be, in that sense, contributing to being environmentally responsible.
Mm-hmm. I think we're all in agreement on that.
So I'm interested in the CEC, and I'd have to say the scenario where you do the zero down, and you have on this page where they talked about the bill credits, the rec payments, and the estimated generated savings.
Okay, so we have any other?
I had another question, perhaps for Emily. I see on the CEC on their estimated production and savings that we're showing the credit rate is the estimated credit adjusted for inflation at 4.8. So should I understand that to be that the numbers assume that the cost of energy after adjustments for inflation are going to go up 4.8%?
So what I'm calling the best case scenario, if you noticed, mirrors the numbers on both proposals. And both proposals are assuming that utility rates will increase by 4.8 and 5% each year over 20 years.
And that's already adjusted for inflation?
I'm not sure. Is it adjusted for inflation? Yeah, that's the escalation rate of the utility cost. And in the report, that's why I brought it down to the moderate scenario. I do a lot of energy work with municipalities in Xcel Energy's territory, and we've never seen a rate be consistently 5% for 20 years, so that's why I brought it down a little bit. But that's where those numbers come from.
Thank you.
Okay, I have two people. Christy and George, I need to hear from you. We have two people who are leaning towards CEC.
So I would say I also lean more towards CEC. Just, basically looking at their zero down financing and their scenarios, their best case scenario, and I think not to be doom and gloom, but their worst case scenario also is a lower risk than the other group.
Which would be a little bit of the risk management that had referenced to Emily previously. Mr. Pond.
Well, I'm going to just back up a second and say I definitely support the move, and that I don't know that there's a wrong decision that we can make necessarily, because I do think we should be committed to this. In addition to other things that Councilmember Fitzgerald mentioned, I think we should be doing all of those things. And I, in this case, also support the CEC proposal. I think it's for where we are today and where we're going. I think it best fits our needs, as well as our profile for risk. I tend to think also that in this, that the ownership of the panels on the back end of this can even improve these numbers further. So I think that's a benefit.
Okay, that's enough. I need a consensus proposal.
Yeah, what staff would be looking for tonight is a consensus to move forward with contractual negotiations with the company you choose. And
One question before we go to that.
yes,
There was a mention of a 10% deposit, and that doesn't necessarily jive with the 0% down.
I think that's returned. That's what I thought. Yeah.
Okay.
The 10% deposit was if we went ahead with the, it was with a CEC proposal, wasn't it? And the 10% was a act of good faith, but I have a feeling it's much like when you purchase property and then it comes back to you. Thank you. Okay. Thanks, Amy. Mr. Stark, you look like you have a question. Nope.
he's going to make a consensus.
Oh, he's going to go for it.
No, but I'll make a consensus that we enter into negotiations with CEC for, based on their proposal. On the zero down, yeah.
Do I have an agreement on that? Show of hands? Sounds good. You have what you need?
Got what I need. Thank you, council.
Okay. I want to thank what's it called? Sunshare. Mark, thank you for your presentation. You made it tough for us to decide, I'll tell you that. And we appreciate that. I think we've handled that one now.
Yeah, we did. And I'd like to thank Emily, too, for the time
Yes,
she's put in
Emily, thank you
to help
very
us with
much,
this, so.
very much. And thank you for holding off for us. So you would have kind of stomped out otherwise, huh? All right.
Thanks,
Okay,
everybody.
thank you very much. Okay, I think we can move on to the urban renewal or renewal Wheat Ridge discussion.
We can, thank you, Mayor. Next item on the agenda is the IGA between the city and Renewal Wheat Ridge. It's pretty well laid out in the memo, the history on this, but we've had the city's had an IGA with the Urban Renewal Authority since 2006 that talks about primarily the sharing of sales tax increment from the town center project. It also talks about other staffing issues and sharing of city staff and payback reimbursement to the city for those funds. As we mentioned a few weeks ago, this contract is expiring, or this IGA is expiring at the end of this year. So we would like to discuss the renewal of that. The current agreement, which does expire in December, as I mentioned, ties the amount of funding that is provided from the city to the Urban Renewal Authority for the purpose of urban renewal projects. It ties it to the amount of sales tax increment, again, from the town center project. And the town center project was the Safeway redevelopment project at the northeast corner of 38th and Wadsworth. That project was completed many years ago, and there was a TIF, a tax increment finance agreement, in place, which shared sales and property tax. A certain amount was used to pay for the public improvements that were needed for that redevelopment project. And once that was paid off, the Urban Renewal Authority continued to collect the property tax TIF, which expired in 2007 after the 25 years, which is allowed by state law. But then the city entered into an IGA with the Urban Renewal Authority to continue sharing the sales tax increment off of that project. And this year's, in 2014, we're projecting that increment is about $450,000. So we track that on a monthly basis. It's similar to an SDEP agreements that we've put in place with several businesses in the last couple of years. And we track that monthly. We accumulate those funds, and then at the end of the year, there's a payment made to the Urban Renewal Authority. And the Urban Renewal Authority has been using those funds, again, for urban renewal projects. And most recently, it's needed almost every penny of that $450,000, or close to $400,000, for the debt service for the property purchase at 44th and Wadsworth. The monthly debt service was about $26,000 a month. And then the other expenses the Urban Renewal Authority had, such as attorney fees and other costs, really ate up that $450,000 a year. However, if you remember, recently we paid down a portion of that loan on those properties, which has decreased the debt service to just under $10,000 a month. And a loan balance of just under $800,000. So we anticipate, with the selling of those two remaining parcels at 44th and Wads, we hope to close on those at the end of this year. We anticipate when we sell those that we should be able to pay off the remainder of that loan. We won't have any debt service, so the Urban Renewal Authority will not need. I mean, they could always, I think, use more money for urban renewal projects, but I think we could reduce that to maybe a $300,000 annual payment, which I've recommended in your memo. It wouldn't be tied to the sales tax increment anymore. That's just kind of a cumbersome process that we've had in place, but I would recommend that it's just an annual lump sum, which could be revisited annually if you'd like, to decrease or increase based on need. But it would be administratively, it would be a lot easier if we just set a lump sum in the IGA. Yes. Oh, yeah, and then current expenses moving forward. The Urban Renewal Authority will still have expenses, and the primary expense, in addition to the administrative type expenses for legal fees and other things like that, is the payback of the loan that the Urban Renewal Authority acquired to do the cleanup for the property at 38th and Yukon. We got a very low interest loan through CHAFA, through HUD, actually. Was it through HUD? Through CHAFA? Or through the EPA, through CHAFA. So we will have debt service on that. Which, do you know what the debt service is going to be?
Annually, it'll be about $200,000 that we
Annually,
would.
200,000, okay. It's, the loan is 301.
$336,000 at the end of the day if we spend what the consultant says.
Debt service is 200.
Well, it's paid, it's paid, we pay it back as we're invoiced for the cleanup of the property. And we anticipate the cleanup is just around $300,000, correct?
Like I said, about $336,000.
Yeah, for the cleanup.
We were approved for a loan of $352,000. We don't think we'll acquire it all, but we did not get a check for $352,000, so we're not paying on the full $352. As we expense on that project, we take a draw off that and we pay back on.
And we're also hopeful that the developer will buy that property as
Correct.
well. So it's not like we're going to hold on to it for years.
Probably in the next few months, at the
Yeah.
beginning of the first of the year, probably.
Will that clear afterward as far as the cleanup as well as the purchase of the property, or will we owe some money?
Yeah, it'll be a profit. We'll sell the property for more than we purchased. It won't cover all the cleanup costs, unfortunately. But I think that's something that the city and the Urban Renewal Authority is committed to, cleaning that property up for the betterment of that corner and to create redevelopment on that project. And the new sales tax and property tax generated off that new center will obviously pay back the city over time. So I think it's important that we continue. Obviously, the city continues a close relationship with the Urban Renewal Authority. I think we're looking back over the last 5 or so years, actually since 2008, I think is when we really started making the authority more proactive, reaching out and talking to property owners, talking to developers, and trying to get some of our most blighted sites cleaned up. I think we've been really successful with that, and I think renewing this agreement will keep the board active, provide them with some funds to do some projects. But as I mentioned, Steve and I looked at what funding needs the authority has in the near term, and I think we could reduce that by about $150,000 to down maybe to $300,000. With the caveat that if projects come up, potentially we may have the board, Urban Renewal Authority, may have to come to the city for some short-term loans or other cash. So, Steve, do you have anything to add?
So then the Urban Renewal Authority would have essentially a pot of money to go and do tax increment financing with?
Well,
is that the way that we should understand this, or
no?
Okay.
The pot of money would pay the current expenses of the Urban Renewal Authority. The Urban Renewal Authority could go out and enter into TIF agreements for development projects, but those would potentially be, those are at reimbursable TIF agreements essentially. So there's no cash up front in those projects unless we do something similar to the Sprouts development where the city did put $1 million in to help pay for public improvements. But the $300,000 this year for next year would essentially cover the debt service for the loan that's outstanding for 30th and Yukon, and then also legal fees and any. We usually have some utility fees and some property maintenance fees for properties at the Urban Renewal Authority. Street light at 44th and Wadsworth, this UR pays for.
And then the city would be, Mr. Art would be the director outlined in here, and the city would continue to pay his salary. So that's not really reimbursable?
It's not, and that's one suggestion I've made in the memo is to change that. The current agreement, which expires in December, calls for the Urban Renewal Authority to reimburse the city for Steve's time, really should for my time too, for our accounting department's time, for Karen, our assistant, anybody that does any urban renewal work, we would reimburse. But since we're going to lower the amounts of contribution to Urban Renewal Authority, I would suggest that we take that out. In my opinion, I think the council is supportive of helping the urban renewal and urban renewal projects. It's honestly just an county administrative kind of hassle to reimburse back. I mean, we're giving money to them and then we're asking for it back, which it's just streamline it and just delete the reimbursement is my recommendation.
Would the authority still be coming back to city council for approval on TIF financing?
Yes.
And that's by the structure of the corporation?
Yep, this IGA does not speak to or change anything in regards to the urban renewal law and TIF financing. That's all by state statute and city code. This is just the IGA stipulates the relationship between the city and urban renewal and really the funding at this point and administrative type things.
And I noticed that we had, we changed the termination provision to be a term provision, and I was curious why we wouldn't also, I mean, I think it's fine to have a term, a 5-year term. Would we not also want to have a termination provision?
I believe I left language in where either party could, with notice, 60-day notice, could terminate the agreement. I think it's under that same section, if I remember. Need my glasses.
Well, actually it doesn't. It's paragraph 6, and you took out the 30 days notice of intention to terminate, and you go on with the term of 60 months.
The very last line.
Unless either party provides 60-day prior written notice of termination. Okay, I didn't think that was as strong as the language you had to begin with.
We can
Okay.
strengthen it if you'd like.
And then the only other thing was that in paragraph number 8, you have the same sentence there twice.
Oh yeah. That probably means it's in the current agreement twice.
He really finds.
Yes, he does. This has not been presented to the Urban Renewal Authority Board yet, so Steve will be taking it to them.
Are they called the commissioners?
You know, I questioned that language in there, and we can double check to make sure legally what they're truly called. Christy, what do you want to be called?
I just told them I called Your Excellency.
I think FUBA was more.
I believe they are still the Board of Commissioners legally.
There was a mention in here with respect to insurance, that the city will be taking on the insurance for the Urban Renewal Authority. Is our insurance okay with that?
And honestly, yeah, it's the same with our housing authority. We also have a similar IGA with our housing authority in the city, and there was a reimbursable clause in that agreement also that our insurance does cover the housing authority, and that this housing authority would reimburse the city, but there was several years ago when I tried to get that reimbursement, I was told no, so by a council member or two. So yes, our insurance company is aware of it, and it's essentially we are covered for most issues, urban renewal authority issues with SRSA.
But given that it's a totally separate entity, we can still cover it under our policy?
Yeah, well, it's considered a component unit of the city, so they take that into account.
But like the housing authority is a completely separate political entity, isn't it?
Yeah, it is, and they have their own audit separately. The urban renewal authority is considered a component unit, so they're part of the city's financial audit. So it is more of a component unit. Housing authority is separate.
Okay, that helps.
I just want to comment that I'm very supportive of Renewal Wheat Ridge, but I also think that it's very prudent to subtract their funding from the town center. So I think this is a very prudent proposal.
Okay. Thank you. So,
Is the authority heir to other funds that have been, how do I say this? The TIF projects that are out there, if we have a surplus of that, say at the Sprouts project, those residual funds revert back to the authority, correct?
Correct.
Are there any such funds now?
There are. The Wheat Ridge Cyclery TIF expired. We had a 10-year agreement with them. It expired after 7 years, 6.5, 7 years. So the state law allows for property tax TIF to extend for a full 25 years. So that those funds are still going to the Urban Renewal Authority, and Steve has to track them separately, and they have to be used for 38th Avenue projects because it's the Wheat Ridge Cyclery is in the 38th Avenue Urban Renewal Plan area. So there is funds. This is really the last year is really the first time that the Urban Renewal Authority has had anything like this, except for the town center. That was off of the town center project, and we had the IGA with the city that they would continue receiving the sales tax.
But that's winding up by the end of the year, is that right?
Well, it is per this agreement, but our proposal is to change the model where the city just gives the Urban Renewal Authority an annual allocation and not tie it to the town center.
And then do we get an accounting periodically of the books, if you will, of the authority?
We do.
In the audit.
Yep, it's in the audit. Urban Renewal Authority, I believe, asked for budget updates.
Correct. We provided that annual report to you back in
Months ago or
3 or 4 years. We came to council with that annual report. It's on the website. And we will at some time in 2015 have a study session with the Urban Renewal Board to make some decisions on what we want to do with that revenues that is coming in. We've reclassified the Wheat Ridge Cyclery because they've paid off. It's now called the 38th Avenue Fund. So we're getting potentially about $50,000 a year in from that. We'll make a decision how we want to do that, and that could be anything on 38th within the plan area, signage for the businesses, improvements to public right-of-ways, anything we want to do. Whereas the money from the town center is not specifically limited just to this town center. It can be used in any of the other project areas because it is not TIF money. It's just an IGA between the Urban Renewal Authority and the city. So the money, that's how we're able to use it on 38th and Yukon Court. So we could use it on Kipling Corridor Urban Renewal Plan, any of them.
Because it's IGA,
Because
not
it is not a TIF.
With respect to the $300,000 annually that we'd be providing to Renault Wheat Ridge, you're indicating that your preferred option is to not require the reimbursement of salaries, rents, costs incurred by the city in working with Renault Wheat Ridge. But what I would like to see is the optional ability of that reimbursement, not that we require that, but that the Renewal Authority has the option to make those reimbursements if, for whatever reason, they do see a significant amount of revenue in a particular year, that we keep that door open. I don't want to say necessarily that we don't want to be reimbursed by the money that we've invested, quote unquote, in Renault Wheat Ridge, but that it's not precluded. That would be my concern, is that we're precluding reimbursements where.
I don't know if striking this language would actually preclude it. You could always make those reimbursements, but I guess we could add some language that's available if you'd want. Yeah.
That door's open.
Yeah, that door's open if you'd like, if that's council's desire.
Any other discussion on that?
Or we could reduce, if they're flush with money, the city could say, we're not going to give you an annual payment, you could reduce their annual allocation too.
But that's, I guess, the other question is, what is that number on an annual basis that they're reaching that keeps us from providing them any kind of funding? What's that?
I think it's going to matter on an annual basis on what projects are in the works. Like right now, we did an analysis and we believe 300,000 is really the minimum that the authority can work with for the next year. I think if we bring on more projects, we might need more funding. If they're not doing anything, we might be able to decrease it. It's going to change annually, honestly.
So if it changes annually and this agreement is through 2019, how does that get adjusted annually if this is already signed?
You can just make an amendment. Yep. We'll have to bring it back to you and change it.
And Mr. Urban, we will be producing this annual report every year, so a line item in the future budgets will show income.
Yeah, it'll be part of your
and
budget
expenditures.
process,
So we would reauthorize this every year.
Through the budget process,
Yeah.
correct, yeah.
Let's go.
The 300,000,
Yes, or whatever you decide on an annual basis, yeah.
which on any kind of a project, 300,000 is not a lot.
It's not, again, the 300,000 at this point is covering the very minimal, but, yep.
Yeah, right. Which we happen to need.
So it doesn't look like this is really needed, but we could just add, for the purposes of urban renewal activities in the amount of $300,000 annually, or such amount is determined by council.
Yeah.
Right. There you go.
Why is it, I understand the need on page 2, item number 4, with respect to employment records. There's 2 elements to that. The first element being the maintenance of employees' work time and services related to the authority, but the other part of that is the expense of such services. I understand the need to strike the language regarding the expense of such services, but it would make sense to me that we'd want to continue to maintain records of how employees' time was spent with respect to the authority.
We could. I mean, it's work for staff to maintain that language. If we're not going to use the data for anything, which we haven't since I've been with the city, I would recommend not doing it. But if council wants an annual report on how much staff time is put into urban renewal projects, we can do that. It's just data we haven't ever used, and I would rather decrease things that staff duties, decrease as many as we administrative types things that we can if we're not going to use the data.
We are a one-person staff.
Sure.
Is everybody comfortable with that, with the way it's been stricken out?
Again, Mr. Urban, we'll be coming to you with an annual report, so if at the end of the year you decide, wow, we really would like a financial, survey of what you're making, we'd be happy to produce that.
I'd like to be as transparent as possible, and it strikes me as though we're removing that, but if you're saying that it does create a burden, I understand that as well.
It's tough because I'm economic development and urban renewal, and a lot of times they're one and the same.
And so am I, and Ken and Karen, our assistant, and our accounting department does stuff, and it's doable. We've done it in the past. It's just we never use the information. But if you guys want that, we can do it.
I'm seeing a shake of the head over there. Okay. Are we getting more comfortable? Do we have more questions on this one, or more things that, are we?
Well, given the hour, I was going to offer consensus
Okay.
that we approve the draft IGA between the City of Wheat Ridge and Wheat Ridge Urban Renewal, subject, I think, to a slight revision in the termination provision and taking out the additional sentence in paragraph 8.
Everybody agree on the consensus? Thank you.
I'd be okay with that.
Okay. Do we have any staff reports that we haven't heard already?
I don't. Yes, I will.
We're going to
That will
discuss
go.
this.
Yeah, thanks,
We're
Dick.
going to bring it up if necessary. Okay.
I have nothing. Thank you.
Anything else other than elected official reports? Genevieve, I'll bet you have one. Education committee met today.
The Education Committee met today, and we have several projects going forward. We're going to, and we didn't talk about this today, but we are going to be meeting with Everett Middle School, hopefully putting together a few luncheons for the kids with some local businesses. We're also going to be bringing together some of our local services and putting together, hopefully, a type of directory so that our schools have easy access to some of the local services that they may need for some of their students. So a lot of things going forward with that.
Any other reports? Mr. Fitzgerald?
Madam Mayor, are you finished with the council people?
No, I'll get to it.
I'd like to ask for consensus on a correction. This is a technical correction to existing code. This has to do with EBU. And at the time EBU was a manufacturer of infused product. They do not have a retail outlet in Wheat Ridge. They don't sell at retail. But they are a manufacturer who sells, you could consider it as wholesale to other vendors. And unfortunately, when they applied originally, they applied under the guise or under the term medical, and then later they wanted to add to that retail, just to clarify the channels of distribution that were open to them. And they went to the city. The city told them that all they needed to do was make an addendum to their original proposal. And later on, I think Mr. Dahl told them that that was not sufficient. And so in order to do this, we need to direct staff to draft an amendment to Wheat Ridge Code to consolidate retail MIP applications and medical MIP applications as one application for business license purposes for the purpose of non-retail product distribution and manufacture. This absolutely changes nothing in terms of the location in Wheat Ridge. No new stores, no new distribution, no new anything here. This is just allows them to distribute their product through all of the available channels. So I'd like to ask council for a consensus.
Did I hear the word non-retail?
I have a question.
Bud suggests you take out the words non-retail, and that works for me too. So
Okay.
this is just to clarify, just to allow them to distribute to via their wholesale to any channel.
I have a question. So currently, a medical application is different from a recreational application. Is that correct?
It is, and that was the confusion with staff. Staff felt thought it was just an amendment to their original application if they wanted to add retail, but when we spoke to legal, it was determined that it's a completely new application, and when they were asking for it under the moratorium, which we cannot accept applications under the moratorium, our current code has two separate sections, one section for medical marijuana and another section for retail marijuana. Both sections specifically talk about licensing separately, so which means currently you'd have to have two separate applications for this purpose.
So you would have to have a separate application for medical and a separate application for recreational and a separate license for each, correct?
Yeah, or, I mean, they have an option of applying for them together, just that IBU did not. They just, on their application, they just applied for medical. They could have applied for them at the same time under one application, but they would have had two licenses, one for medical, one for retail.
Well, back in April when we did our first moratorium, I think it was deceptive, and I don't remember who said it, but I do remember somebody saying, well, we need to exempt IBU because they were already, quote, far along in the process, when in reality they had only put in their application that exact day that we did the moratorium. So I feel deceived by them in that being told, oh, we've been doing this a long time, when in fact only that morning had they put in their application. So then they put in their MIP application for medical, and now there's been this confusion on the issue of the recreational. So we're making concessions for IBU. Do we have anybody else in Wheat Ridge that has both medical and recreational MIPs?
We do. The other MIPS, is my understanding, have both licenses.
And did they apply for them separately?
I believe they applied for them together, so
But they had two applications and two licenses.
I believe so.
And this is making concessions specifically for IBU. Is that correct?
This would apply, my understanding, would apply to all MIPS that would come to the city, that they could, if they apply for a MIP application, it covers both medical and retail. So it would apply for.
If we do this.
Yeah, if we do this, it would apply to all future MIP applications.
So what does the rest of the state do?
The state, the reason we have it separate, the state has it separate. They have a separate application for each.
So this would be one more thing that Wheat Ridge is doing unique separate, and we've got that in our heightened density, we've got it in a lot of different areas. So this is one more thing that we're doing unique, and I'm against this, and I disagree with it. It says no change to any aspect of public perception. It is true it is the same location. It is true they're not having any retail sales. However, it is not true that it's absolutely no change. We're saying you can do medical and now you can do recreational. So it probably should say here recreational infused product manufacturing. So.
Madam Mayor.
Oh, sorry, I was trying to read it. Go ahead. I'm sorry, Zach.
If this change is made, how does that impact an existing business?
If it changes what? I'm sorry.
If this
changes.
change moves forward, how does that impact an existing business who has not yet applied, or who has previously applied for medical but not applied for this new sort of hybrid?
I think that would be up to council if you could make this retroactive to all current MIP licenses. If they have a MIP license just for one or the other, that their license would be amended to cover both. That could be an option. Or you could require that they reapply when there's no moratorium in place. I mean, you have options.
In essence, it just allows them to sell through any customer, to any customer.
They can't, but not
And-
retail, not like.
No, they sell as a wholesale manufacturer to any customer. And, I think this is about distribution channels more than anything else. This is not about allowing them a retail license to sell in Wheat Ridge.
We have the medical MIP and we have the recreational MIP per state guidelines, as I understand it. So what we're doing here is we're making a concession for EBOO so they can do both, if I understand this correctly.
Well, through just a technical error, they neglected to apply for recreational manufacturing. But this was just a boo-boo, and they were told by the city later that it was not a problem.
I'm still against it, and I can sympathize with them, and I understand their position that they feel like that it was a technicality. However, it's another concession we're making for that business. It's another concession, it's another way they're weaving in to change the rules.
Madam Mayor, I have a question of Mr. Fitzgerald. You handed me this. In that second paragraph, did I miss something here in the discussion? That word retail in the second line, are you sure that isn't recreational? Because you keep saying they don't want to do anything retail, but here you're consolidating retail and medical. Don't you mean recreational and medical?
Retail and recreational is synonymous. It's not retail sales. It's the production of recreational or retail marijuana.
It's selling wholesale to those who would sell it for recreational purposes.
That's your definition of retail?
In this instance.
Okay.
And due to the fact, I'm trying to mirror the language that is used in our separate code when we have a retail license and a recreational license.
And then you want the
Non-retail
last, on the fourth line, delete the term non-retail?
Correct.
Okay.
Right, I see why. Because it's the whole. Okay, so the question that we have before us is that we have Mr. Fitzgerald would like to bring this up so that we can change our code as it is right now based on a sort of a technical difficulty. And Ms. Wooden is taking believes that that's really changing or creating another license. Is that what you're feeling, Ms. Wooden?
I think she feels that we're making
An exception to?
workarounds over, I don't know if it was a technical, I don't know that I'd call it a technical thing, or perhaps an oversight that they didn't check a box, is what I would call it personally.
Are there other companies in this position?
My understanding is that our other MIPS they applied initially for both at the same time.
So we have one company that did not apply for both. Go ahead, Ms. Davis.
I would just like to ask or recommend, I mean, I'm okay with looking at this and discussing it. I don't know that I agree or disagree. I don't know that I'm okay with doing a workaround on someone who didn't fill out an application appropriately. But I'm okay looking at it, but I do think we look at it at our December 1st study session with the rest of them. I don't feel the need to look at it separately. I think we could add this as an agenda item to our overall discussion of how the city wants to move forward, where we are now and where we want to go, for multiple reasons. One, it also tends to bring a large group in, and we'll have, that a lot of public comment. I'd rather have public comment on both issues rather than separate sessions with double public comment on similar issues.
Okay. So, since the moratorium exists, you would like to hold on this whole conversation until we make a determination of what changes we're going to make overall, and at the same time.
Yeah, and I think in interest of, I know that some of it, we're trying to, we're looking at the process to see if somehow the city, if there was a technical glitch or administrative glitch from the city standpoint, and, from the business standpoint, are we being respectful? I'd probably get booed at this point if we had a group of people here. But I think the other thing is that there's a lot of work I think that the company in question is doing right now. So I don't know that delaying it to December 1st is going to affect anyone adversely as well. So I'm being respectful of all parties for us to look into it and also to discuss it openly.
Hold the discussion. Other comments on that? Is there consensus on that? Go ahead.
One of my main concerns here is that we are seeking to combine an area that the state has defined as two separate areas. And if staff is directed to look into this, I would like there to be some concerted effort to understand better why the state has those as two separate. Is there any impacts to combining those two as one? And I'm not keen on doing a retroactive something or other for any particular business, regardless of the field that it's in. It just doesn't set right with me, but I'm willing to look at a draft amendment. That does not mean that I'm supportive of it, but that does mean that I'm interested in understanding this issue and how it relates to state regulations, so that we're not, again, creating something unique here that is then burdensome for other people to adhere to. That's the other side of this. If we're going to be regulating marijuana in Wheat Ridge, we need to be doing it in a way that is effective so that we can say that we're doing it right.
All of which will also come at that December discussion. Further comments on this? Sounds like it's basically pretty much tabled.
No, what I heard I agree with, which is that, bringing it.
Consensus to bring it to that discussion.
What I heard is essentially the consensus to direct staff to do this, to bring it with the other things that are being discussed. I agree with that.
Yeah.
All right, so we do have a consensus to hold off on this discussion until that point when we are discussing all of the whatever regulations we've formulated. Okay. All right, anybody else, and then I'll ask the clerk. Any other
Oh, I just wanted to explain what the fancy cage was in the back corner. That is a polling place in a box. And tomorrow, this council chambers will be a voter service and polling center. So if there's anyone who would like to come in and vote a flat ballot, they can do that. There is also audio voting available and touch screen. And if you moved recently and haven't registered, you can come and register, and they will print you a ballot that's already plugged in, charging up. It has its own modem. It's hooked to the county. This is really high tech. Current ID and or some kind of bills or something, I don't know. A former, something that says that they live where they live. Yep. Yeah. We had a lady came in today with her twin 18-year-old boys who just turned 18, I believe last week. They were going to go home, register online, and then they will come in tomorrow and be able to vote. So there's some, we had a lady came in last week. She came in and got a registration form to register because the week prior she had just become a citizen. So there's some kind of neat stories out there about voting. I'm a little tired of hearing, I hear TV commercials at home and stuff in the mail, and then I come to work and people are calling, well, what about this and how do I vote here? And so I kind of have it 24/7, and I'm going to be glad when tomorrow's over. But get out there and vote if you haven't voted.